thank you so much, and just want to say how much I admire Professor Juan, and all that he does, and all of the energy he brings to everything. I'm always amazed at the amount of energy that he has for everything.
Thank you.
I'm going to go through this, kind of showing you two examples of the work that we have done. Within the current socio-political context, there is a real need to support the civic and education trajectories of multilingual learners. And so it's from that place of the need for positioning multilingual learners as assets versus a deficit people in the educational context. And that's kind of the work we've been doing. I've been working with a wonderful multilingual and multicultural group of doctoral students, colleagues, and K through 12, young people. So I've been working with them, and you have some photographs here in this first slide of some of the projects we've done within science, within hip hop, using gardening. But essentially, as you'll hear from me, it's really to do with embodied work. So thinking about how we teach, SFL, and include the embodiment practices that are so important for the work we're doing. I wanted to just highlight how the work that we do is very much transdisciplinary, in the sense that we are drawing heavily from Halliday's theories of semiotic theories, and we're combining that with other culturally sustaining pedagogies to really engage in a mode of intervention that addresses inequity and injustice. And Halliday's one of Halliday's papers in 1973, he called on applied linguists to engage in transdisciplinary SFL praxis that can function as a mode of intervention to address inequity and justice. And Chris Matheson, in discussing Halliday's work, talks about this need for the transdisciplinary work moving into community-oriented action of the kind found in education, healthcare, and other work. And so we see our work kind of framed within this transdisciplinary kind of conceptualization of education practices. In the background in the United States, there's a real need to be supporting the multimodal and multilingual meaning making of youth in both inside in and out of school. There is limited teacher education preparation that supports multilingual learners in engaging in agentive practices. So our approach is to integrate inquiry, design thinking, and disciplinary language development, develop out-of-school youth and teacher programs that support critical participatory approaches to learning, knowing, and doing, and designing a rich multimodal environment for all learners. That's kind of our approach, our aim, our desire. Sometimes we fall flat on our face, and then we have to get up again and start again, because it's always, as you all know, as educators, it's difficult work that needs constant refining. The context of the projects that we are doing, and I'm going to be talking about a newly arrived multilingual center, and then also out of the classroom contexts. In Georgia, there has been in the last 10 years, there's been 104% increase in Latino population. So there's a large Latine population. As you have known, you're probably reading in the newspapers at the moment, but this is has not just started, but there's a lot of anti-immigration discourses and policies in the state. And so there's a really important thing that we need to do, which is to support our youth in their access to disciplinary knowledge and linguistic knowledge, but also supporting them in really thinking about ways to become leaders in their communities. And so I'll go through two projects just to give you an illustration of the work we do, and then I'm very happy to open up to questions. I know my friend Winfred will give me a time thing once I'm once I'm there. So please let me know if I run out of time.
No problem.
Because I want to give lots of time for conversation. So, in this transdisciplinary framework, we're looking at culturally sustaining pedagogies that was developed by Paris and Aline, and before them, in terms of Geneva Gay and Gloria Ladson Billings, a work, a space where this multi-semiotic, linguistic and cultural repertoires of our youth are supported, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And thinking about how we can use an embodied teaching learning cycle that supports them in using agency in designing their own kind of knowledge base and developing critical semiotic awareness. So the embodied teaching and learning cycle, Nicole Sifrin and I, some of you may have read it. It was a TESOL quarterly article, talking about the ready has highlighted the importance of not linguistic, but also the embodied, us in the room. At the moment, I can't see you, so it's kind of strange. But normally, there's this whole relational building that's going on. There's our sense of our sensory processes, all of this. And if I want to quote from Halliday saying, all human processes, however they are manifested, whether in our consciousness, our material frames, or in the physical world around us, are the outcome of forces which are both material and semiotic at the same time. So our work tries to think about how to engage our students, our youth, in embodied learning, in thinking about, a new community by, say, for example, mapping an area, in thinking about, thinking of new solutions in their schools by building artifacts that demonstrate a vision that they have for the school, that they can argue for and hopefully get principals to accept, as new visions for the future. So our work, in terms of the teaching learning cycle that all of you will be familiar with from Joan Rothery and Jim Martin from the 1980s and 1990s, just kind of thinking about, like, at every stage, how are we engaging our youth in embodied ways? What kind of materials are we using? And how does the entanglement of the materials, of the embodiment and of the linguistic all support us in moving forward with this work? So key tenets of our CSSFL Praxis is, it's really good teaching. In the sense of all of you probably are familiar with these processes, but highlighting the importance of multimodality, in terms of bilingual learners, and in our out of school settings, we always have adult partners who are coupled with the bilingual learners. So they are all thinking about envisioning new pathways for their communities together, through use of different modes, through a very sequenced way of genre and modes that I will talk to you in a bit about, and then also thinking about like how to apprentice our bilingual learners into argumentation, into explanation, into narrative, into whatever the genres are, but in ways that are also making them critically aware of their role as actors in solving issues, social issues in their communities. Multimodality and meaning making. Recent research has highlighted the benefits of multimodal curriculum in the sense that learners tap into an array of modal resources such as drawing, sound, gesture, and other modes in making full meaning. In disciplinary instruction, which I'll talk about at the end of the presentation, learners develop nuanced understanding of the subject matter through the multimodality, and multimodal curriculum can change classroom power dynamics, with youth sometimes gaining more recognition as experts and agents of their own learning when they're allowed and opened up to use of digital storytelling, through role playing, through theatre, through surveying, through mapping, etc. Something that we tend to do with our youth, our programs that are out of school, we always apprentice our graduate students to become learners with youth in these spaces. And so the graduate students, when they are about to engage with the youth, they have already developed an understanding of SFL, of the importance of participatory action research and multimodality, and through that they become allies and co-conspirators with the youth, in thinking about new ways of challenging, social problems in our area or in the schools. And then our graduate students then through this begin to think about multi-semiotic curricular designing for their own context, for their own classrooms. So we see adults as key people, being integrated into our work. So just to give you an example of the work we've done, the multimodal kind of sequenced work, embodied work that we've done in out of school contexts with middle school and high school students is the students start by telling stories with the adult participants, a story that's very important to them in terms of their place, connected to the place, their sense of place at school. And then from there, they think about the issues like the problems and the affordances of the space at school. We bring in urban planners to support the youth in learning how to survey the area and to map the school. And then from there, they use building blocks to design a school a resource for the school that could support them in feeling more integrated into those spaces. And then gradually they build up arguments to argue for whatever they have designed, and they use argumentative techniques. We train them, and then they argue and seek approval for their artifacts to be realized in real time in the school. So in this whole process, we use storytelling, role theatre, mapping, and drawing. And all of this is kind of leading to a very specific then use of argumentation and performance, that is supporting them and thinking of themselves as civic leaders. And that's the aim of our work. So here we have, this is an example of one of our students who is just newly arrived actually from Mexico, and she with her partners have designed a space at school where she envisions community gardens and apartments that will be around the school. And you can see that like she's relating to her adult peer adult companion on the path. She's using building blocks. She's outside, she's surveyed everything. And so then she's using Dexis, gesture, building blocks, and body positioning to make full meaning. And so she's saying here, this is the model for today. This is for 6th and 7th grade. This is a little mall. This is community gardens and apartments and garden. What I'm highlighting here is that through the embodiment, it becomes not a language lesson, but it becomes an integrated content and language understanding of environment and design that supports our learners in becoming confident meaning makers as they go through this process. Another important part of this work is critical genre-based approach, the importance of incorporating students' voices into the curriculum, teaching the high-stakes genres, and then providing an audience for youth where they're collaborating with each other. They're thinking of their audience and they're planning, drafting, revising, and editing. And so you can see on the right here that one of our youth is thinking about all of the arguments for he wants to see a very, very simple requests, and they were realized, by the way, by the principal. But he wanted a fence around the school because fear of others, fear of people coming into the space, and also a marquee, to talk about new things that were happening in the school. They're very kind of modest requests, but he spent a long time with his partner working on this before they presented it. So what you can see here is that the genre-based work is taught or is developed based on the needs and the desire and vision of the youth in this instance. Here you can see and I don't think I can actually play it because it's sorry, go back. Yeah. So yeah. So let me see. Sorry. Yeah. Here you can see Anthony performing in front of some of the students and the principal arguing for his marquee. You can see he's got a little a demonstrate on the table. You can see the marquee that he has designed with his partners, and he kind of performs actually a kind of a hip hop performance of his vision. This kind of very much connects up to what Choi and E and others talk about in terms of changing classroom power dynamics when youth start gaining their own recognition as experts and agents of their own learning. And so the key for us is to support our youth in seeing themselves as civic agents of change. So the SFL like focus on meaning making in terms of multimodal and also in terms of specific linguistic genres. This is all connected to a relational building that happens, over time. I mean, we were in the school, for this particular project for 15 weeks. And so, over time, then it becomes much stronger. It's not something that one can do in a day. So sorry, kind of doing this here. So in terms of the work, we also use SFMDA to analyze what's going on with our youth, to see how they're making meaning across the different modes. So here you can see that that the body posture, gesture, and speech are kind of the most important modes that are being enacted in Lucia's demonstration. And so this SFMDA analysis that we do with our programs is important for us in terms of thinking of are we moving towards supporting our students in their civic and academic literacy development. And so we kind of use these as tools to think about that. So that's kind of like that's kind of the out of school approach that we've taken. And so I'm looking forward to questions about that when we get into that. The second example I wanted to talk to you about is within school. So using the same kind of participatory approach, but also thinking about specific grade level language development. And so I'm working at the moment in a center for newly arrived multilingual learners who have very little English and who have sometimes been traumatized on their trips or their travel up to the United States. And so this center, the students are in this center from for half a day, and then they go back to their home school. And so within that half day, they're working on mathematics and English language arts. And so my focus here is just sharing with you the approach that we've taken in the math class, with students coming again from the culturally sustaining SFL Praxis. And so in terms of our goals within school, there's kind of obviously the focus on language development from math sense making, in terms of what they know, making sense of mathematics in their lives. We want to, again, like just as we did in the out of school, we want the students to see a connection of mathematics to their own lives, because otherwise it has no impact. Thinking about the culture and community connections of mathematics and science to so making sure that students can share about their cultural understandings about, for example, mathematics or scientific explorations. So the importance of doing that, and then knowledge building, in terms of what Mayton talks about, supporting the students in learning to seeing themselves as competent knowers. So we're looking at language development, cultural and community connections, and knowledge building within the school in this context. This is an embodied teaching and learning circle that we have specially designed for the mathematics classroom, and here it starts out with use of visual displays, gestures, and connections to real life, and then a deconstruction of language so that multilingual learners can kind of understand the terminology, the mathematic terminology, and then you know, as you would all expect, the joint construction and then the independent construction. And so this cycle has been adapted just for our newly arrived learners, and you know, we continue. It's complex because the learners are coming from different countries and all from different experiences with English and mathematics, and so it's very much circular and always moving. It's a very dynamic process. So in this context, you know, in terms of building the field through multimodality, stage one, we have created visuals, and the lead teacher uses gestures in very systematic ways to support students in terms, like for example here, they're looking at you know, questions of equation and equality, and so they're using just gestures of less than, more than, and then they're using visuals and experiments to get them thinking about algebra in their own countries, and differences, you know, in terms of the different countries that they're in, and the lead teacher, you know, his statement about you know, kind of the use of multimodality within the mathematics classroom is that you know, he can feel that students are much more engaged and immersed in the disciplinary discourse, you know, when it's a very systematic exploration through multimodality. So there's the multimodal exploration. Then there's the kind of the breaking down, the kind of looking at language, and kind of you know, remember the transcript we had from the out of school contexts. In school contexts, we use you know, in this particular school that we are working in at the moment, it's all Spanish speakers. So we have translations, visual representations, and then kind of genre, you know, micros to the sentence level of, you know, of expressions of equations, and so this kind of mathematic dictionary we've developed so that the students can keep, you know, using this. They keep them in their folders, and they can refer and come back to these expressions, you know, in terms of expressing themselves in this new language for them. We then do joint you know, just like we did the joint construction of argumentation for the principal fighting for new resources in the school. Here, there is kind of a joint teachers and students think about like how to solve algebraically a word problem, and here we have developed kind of like, you know, very much kind of like broken down the genre in terms of thinking about like how what you do first and how you write it up. And the lead teacher said this following about, you know, his response to you know, to the way that we've been developing this curriculum is breaking down word problems into smaller questions helps guide students. In fact, whenever they see a word problem, they just like don't want to do it. However, we put smaller questions, templates, and it gets them thinking about the genre and the process of thinking and problem solving. And so we're kind of, you know, moving through this with the students, seeing what works for them, tweaking it. and supporting them in the genre awareness. In the final kind of teaching learning cycle part, the independent construction at the end, we get the students to develop their own word problem, which you can see up at the top here. So someone has developed this word problem, and then it's given to another group to solve. And so in the word problem visualization and in the diagram, all of this has been done by the next group. So you have both, kind of that independent thinking, the kind of the transfer into doing independent construction, and then the the validation or of that word problem by others resolving these issues. So here the lead teacher talks about the fact that the multilingual learners at this stage are able to identify their terms, translate them into meaningful word problems, and construct equations that reflect real world scenarios. So it's the word problems are something that is related to their own lives, and that's what we talked about, the importance always of relating what we are teaching to real world problems in this work. So in conclusion, in our work, we aim to recognize, sustain, and expand the multimodal and multilingual meaning making of our youth and adult participants through immersion in multi-semiotic resources and modalities. The participants are supported in coupling multiple modes in our out of school context to enact innovative designs for a range of audiences, and that's our goal. In terms of this work. In terms of limitations, there are many limitations that we can open up to, in a minute. Is with all of this work, we get so intent on developing the materials and building the relationships. We like even in the inside school, we have doctoral students who are coming and are working side by side with the youth. But something with all of that kind of work, we need to kind of be reflecting more on the semiotic and on the meaning making. So that the youth can really develop that meta-linguistic awareness. In terms of another need is, it's difficult to get the funding to infuse a kind of a culturally sustaining SFL praxis into teacher education programs and kind of lab schools. And we need to keep on developing stronger relationship with community partners, as that is the key of our work.